Welcome to KPM, or Kyle's Phenomenological Method. Here I try to present seemingly difficult philosophical issues in a way that average Joes can understand them. In this video, I will be presenting my own conclusions, but I do encourage the audience to engage the ideas and create their own conclusions. And today I have my friend Sam. Uh, a little bit about yourself, Sam, if you could.
Okay. So my name's Sam. Hello. Kyle and I went to high school together, played several sports with each other. Um, After high school, I went away to school. I went away to college. Um, I've been to two, three of them now, just from plans not working out and me transferring and whatnot. But I study psychology. Want to do something involving child development, be that teaching, potentially summer camps, kind of whatever. It's kind of whatever right now, you know.
Oh yeah.
But Yeah, that's kind of it. I'm a college student, and Kyle and I are friends.
Oh yeah. Well, that's pretty much where I'm at too. Went to school, got my degree. I work in a mental health unit now, but other than that, I got my son. He's he'll be 6 months here pretty soon, and it's like another job having him around. But I love
Yeah, I
him.
bet.
Anyway, to get back to the episode, uh, this is episode 7 actually. This number's wrong, but so I'll just start with Pullman quote analysis. Just to kind of cut down time, I took out my first kind of segment. But this quote goes, "Worry never robs tomorrow of its sorrow. It only saps today of its joy." This is by Leo F. Buscaglia. I don't know. Let's just say
That
Leo
looks right.
F. So does this quote have any, like, do you get any first ideas from this quote or anything?
I
Um,
can I can kind of see how you could put this into a religious context. You know, kind of make it a bit of a prayer almost. You know,
yeah.
um, by saying don't let's not worry let's not worry about things that are out of our control. Like that's something for God to worry about. So let's pray. You know, that's my line of thinking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So when I get this quote, I think pretty much like don't worry pretty much because it doesn't help anything. That's what so I was a high jumper in high school and college, and I always had to, like, it's really kind of nerve-wraching when you're back at the at your mark and you're waiting to go, because you're like, dang, like if I mess this up, this could be my last jump. You never know. And I always took the approach of like, just don't worry about it, because whatever's gonna happen is already gonna happen. Like there's nothing that I can do that's gonna like really change the potential. Like for example, if I'm going in to take a test, this was the person I learned the quote from was one of my professors at North Central. He said, "You already failed the test before you walk into the class, pretty much. So like you've already whatever work you've already done is already done, and if you did it or didn't do it, it's already been decided. So don't worry about what's going to happen. Like either you're ready, either you're prepared or not, and worrying about it's not going to change
Yeah.
it."
Damn, I like that. That's a cool professor who told you that.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think I want to say it was my well, kind of professor slash track coach, Coach Helberg. He was
Yeah.
monumental. Not gonna lie.
Nice.
But so on to the next quote. Most people would rather be certain they're miserable than risk being happy. Do you have any first impressions off this quote?
um yeah, so like a lot of people typically don't like expand past their comfort zones, you know, because that they risk being uncomfortable. And typically, you know, the saying is happiness lies like outside of your comfort zone or something like that. um and there's nothing wrong with not wanting to be comfortable. Like that's a perfectly fine way to live your life too. um but that's what this makes me think of, where um most people would rather just sort of sit and be like tolerant of where they're at, rather than going out and risking things to be happy, you know.
Yeah.
That's what that makes me think of.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that. Where it's like, especially with the comfort part, where it's like, do I really want to risk? Because you never know what you're like getting into, kind of, if you go outside your
Yeah.
comfort zone. So you could be risking death. You know what I mean? So it's like, is it really worth like
Yeah,
death
fair.
to try to like get whatever it is? And that's how
Well,
some people can like see things. You know,
yeah.
but like,
I suppose that's even more relevant now, being in a living in an active pandemic.
yeah, actually, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, it's kind of the same thing you were saying. Like, some people will like be afraid to take a step forward because they don't know where you're gonna like land at, but then they forget all the pain that comes with staying at where they're at now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of what that reminds me of. It's
Yep.
like you're miserable, like you're gonna be miserable either way, but at least if you try to make your life better, you could have one thing a little better than if you just don't do anything.
Be a little less miserable.
Yeah. All right. Next one is, I guess, a poem by Maya Angelou called "Passing Time." Your skin like dawn, mine like dusk. One paints the beginning of a certain end, the other the end of a sure beginning. Do you have any first thoughts on that?
I'm kind of still tossing it over a little bit. I guess it. Oh, it kind of paints like a picture of like life and death kind of being, I don't know, not necessarily lovers in the poem, but two counterparts at the very least
Yeah.
is what I get.
So what I took from this poem, I focused a lot on the first stanza. I believe that's what they call it.
Yeah.
And I go, your skin is like dawn, and mine is like dusk. So like, if one paints the beginning of a certain end, and that's I guess musk, not dust. But I guess dusk and dawn makes a little bit more sense to me.
Yeah, that's fair. Your brain just
So
makes little associations like that.
that kind of changes it for me because like dawn and dusk, like dawn could be like the beginning of a certain end. If it's dawn, it's like the beginning of the day. So like the day is certain to end no matter how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it was dusk, then it's the end of a sure beginning because you're guaranteed to have the next day because the sun's gonna come up rather like regardless of how you feel. But with Musk, I don't really know how to take that.
For me, when I saw, I kind of wish that it said uh, dusk instead of musk. To be honest with you,
Yeah,
um, because that's a much prettier like of a mental picture, you know. Because when I picture musk, it's not like always the most friendly
yeah,
sort of a thing, you know. Um, and it makes me just think about I don't it's grim, but it kind of makes me picture death a little more, you know? Like that's what that line represents to me, I guess, in the poem.
hmm. So, and it's interesting to me too that he says that one person's skin is the end of a sure beginning, while the other person's skin is the beginning of a certain death. Or yeah. So, but like, which one do you think would Musk like like be about? Do you think it's about the beginning or the end?
The end.
The end.
Mm.
Huh. Okay, that's weird.
Why is that?
I'm just thinking like, how does someone's skin look like Dawn or Musk? But
It's just really I think she's just using really colorful language to like make your imagination do
oh yeah,
funny stuff.
short little tangent about philosophy here. Analytical philosophers, which I don't think I tend to lean towards, but looking at this, I can see why they have their little way of doing things. they aim to like explain things in the most precise way possible.
Hmm.
So using colorful language like Dawn and Musk would not be something that they would want to do. While continental philosophers use words like Dawn and Musk to explain things that are extremely hard to explain using normal words.
What did you call the second group of philosophers?
Continental.
Continental philosophers.
Yep.
I like them more. I see the appeal of being super technical about everything, but like life's colorful, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I see. I like continental a lot better too, but I can see like where analytical stuff could be used. Like I don't know what she's trying to say here.
Yeah, like it's definitely no, don't get me wrong. Each of them definitely has their place in the world. I don't necessarily like using like the left brain, brain analogy.
Yeah.
But a lot of people it understand it, you know. Um, the left brain one is definitely more I see as being the analytical side of things, and Continental is more artful, so to speak.
Yep.
Um, and don't get me wrong, they're both uh, schools of thought within philosophy, so they're both going to be pretty rigorous, you know. But um, left one, I feel like, is a lot more straight lines. If A, then B, and the artful one is a lot, or what's the word? Oh shoot, very web-like in its thinking. So you have like one thought bubble here, and that can stem, any different number of thoughts, and then each of those thoughts can stem any different number of thoughts. There's a specific word for it, but I can't remember it right now.
I want to say neuroplasticity, but I don't think that's the right word.
No, that talks about like your nerves, like the
Yeah.
cells themselves. Yeah, but yeah.
Uh, when you were saying that, I was thinking I actually had just watched a video from Jordan Peterson that kind of went into like left brain, right brain thinking a little bit.
Hmm.
And what he was saying was that like the left part of our brain is like routines and like things that we've already like mastered pretty much to the point where it's kind of a code. While our right brain is like creating new routines. So it would make sense where it'd be
Mm.
like, oh, how you were saying that one thought goes to the next thought, but it could go either any way. And I think that would be more right. And then the left brain would definitely be uh analytical, like you were saying.
Yeah, and we need both. We really do. Like
Yeah.
that's unavoidable. They're just different
Do you imagine if
preferences in
we
the world.
were oh sorry.
No, that's it. That's all I had to say.
Oh, but can you imagine if we were like unable to create routines, so every day was like a brand new day, or if we could only do the routine
Yeah,
we do? Like, can you imagine how fucking complex life would be?
it'd be so chaotic too. You would, if you can't form those basic patterns, you would never be able to find any sort of meaning in life ever, ever.
Yeah, and then if you're like stuck in a routine, then when something throws that off, you're not gonna know what the fuck to do.
Exactly. Yeah, both sides of that coin.
All right, well, I didn't think that this poem would get such good discussion, but here we are.
It's Maya Angelou, man.
Let's go ahead and move on. So, the topic of today's discussion was the existence of God. I guess I did not put that in a slide, but what I'm trying to do is like I have the positions, then I have an explanation for why God should exist, and then I have at the end I have something to say why it's possible that he shouldn't, like a little counter argument.
Okay.
So, without further ado, we'll go into the positions. So there's two types of atheism. There's strong or positive or hard atheism, which explicitly asserts the non-existence of gods. And then there's the negative, soft, and weak versions of atheism where they do not believe in the existence, but do not explicitly assert there to be none. So the weak version kind of gives you an out if God's real, but if you're a strong atheist, there's no possibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Genuine. So this is a little graphic I found on the internet. I thought did a really good job of like explaining a good amount of positions. So to start, we'll just go with like the claims, and it's kind of like a table. So claim one is God exists, and you can either believe claim one or not believe claim one. Well, I guess not. It's the first one. So if you do not believe claim one, and you do not believe claim two, that no gods exist, then you're a weak agnostic atheist, and you have this is the only position that you don't have to prove why you believe that position.
Okay.
Because you're saying that you don't believe God exists, and you're saying that I don't believe that God
Mm.
doesn't exist. So there's no reason to explain shit. But if you're still in claim one section, if you do believe claim one and you do not believe claim two, but I do not. I believe claim one, but I do not know claim one is true. Then you're an agnostic theist. But if you believe God exists and you know claim one is true, or you know God exists, then you're a Gnostic theist where you know. So the difference between Gnostic and agnostic is like if you're agnostic, you say you don't know, like you accept that you don't know, but Gnostic thinking is that you like
You
you know.
know, you
Yeah.
know, you know. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So down to the I'll just call this quadrant three. You do not believe that God exists, but you do believe that no gods exist. So that makes you a strong agnostic atheist, and it's strong because you assert the non-existence of gods. So you agree with claim two. So everything where you agree with claim two will automatically be strong because you're like asserting that you do not believe it. But so if you do not believe that God exists and you do believe that claim two is true, that no gods exist, then you're a strong Gnostic atheist because you are claiming to know and you say you know. But you can't say that you believe claim one and claim two in this fourth quadrant here because that's a clear contradiction.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I was still just piecing together the rest of the table.
Yeah, it's a pretty complex table, but I thought it was like a pretty good way to like explain these positions.
Yeah, I agree. It does a good job of that.
Do you have any questions you think I could help answer or anything?
Well, really, the only one was the difference between agnostic and gnostic because I've never seen that word until just now. So I was curious to know what the difference was. Um, but you said it. It's the
Yeah,
difference of being rational and like having faith, having like the faith to believe, I think.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like faith that God's not real or faith that God's real.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because it's still faith. And that's how it's being classified by the language. Yeah. It's just faith in a different direction.
Yeah. Do you have anything else or any more comments, or do you want to look at the graph a little bit more?
Nothing like that, but it is 7:34, so I was gonna start my own stream if that's
All right,
still
sounds
cool.
good.
Cool. That might take a little bit of just doing.
All right, that's cool. And I can just like edit this out. So
Yeah.
I'll just put something.
Okay. Everything should be fine.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So on to the next slide. I thought this was another graphic that kind of explains a couple positions pretty well. So over here you got the atheists, and over here you have the theists. Well, on the top you have the agnostics, and on the bottom you have the agnostics. So a good way to think about it is that like the agnostics do not claim to know, while the Gnostics on top claim to know, and the theists or the people who believe in God are on the right, and people who do not believe in God are on the left. Where would you say you fall on this spectrum here?
Um, hold on, your screen just blacked out for a second. There we go. Um, honestly, personally, probably in hmm, probably somewhere along the line between being a Gnostic theist and an agnostic theist. Because like
Yeah.
I defining your faith, it, if you haven't been through seminary, essentially, or taken specific philosophy courses, it can be really difficult to do in the proper terms and have it makes be a logical and sound argument. Um, I'm not really sure how to do that, so that's where I fall, I would say.
Oh, okay. So you're kind of, I want to say, kind of going back to what we were talking about with like continental. You're like kind of in the continental where like not but you feel that there's like a God, but like you don't really absolutely know for sure, and you don't know how to like really explain your position. Or I mean, I don't know if you know how to explain, but you were saying like some people may not be able to explain their position as well because of lack of like terms, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, kind of that. I mean, like I can talk about my faith and why it makes sense to me, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but in like a real not I want to say a real philosophical self discussion, but a very philosophically charged conversation, it's difficult to back that up beyond them just saying, well, you're crazy. And I have to just be like, yep, I am, because I can't define it any other way.
Okay. So if I'm right, you're saying like you have this like you believe God's real, but it's like your arguments for it aren't as strong as like your belief, kind of.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that's it exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Because I've definitely been in positions where like shit could have went a lot worse than what it ended up going, and it kind of like makes me feel like, yeah, there's something's helping me out there. Like I don't know why, like but something's definitely got my back because it could have went like X, Y, and Z could have went south so fast, but it didn't end up happening that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually an argument we get into uh, on this in the arguments I have. But let's see. So here's the spectrum of theistic probability by Richard Dawkins. So there's strong theists that say that there's a 100% probability that God exists. In the words of Carl Jung, I do not believe, I know. Uh, there's two de facto theists. There's a very high probability, but short of 100%. I do not know for certain, but I strongly believe in God and live my life on the assumption that He is there. Number three is leaning towards theism, higher than 50%, but not very high. I am very uncertain, but I am inclined to believe in God. I feel like I'm somewhere between like numbers two and three. Uh, but then there's number four, completely impartial, exactly 50%. God's existence and non-existence are exactly the same. Number five, leaning towards atheism, lower than 50%, but not very low. I don't know whether God exists, but I'm inclined to be skeptical. De facto atheism, very low probability, but short of zero. I do not know for certain, but I think God is very improbable, and I live my life on the assumption that He is not there. And then seven, I know there is no God, and with the same conviction as Young knows there is one.
Yeah,
Where would you say you fall on the spectrum?
probably two.
A good two?
Yeah, like a high two, to be honest. I actually am ridiculously faithful, but again, I just lack the logic behind it to spell it out in stronger terms. But to me personally, that can substitute rationality, because faith is not necessarily meant to be rational.
Yeah.
So maybe even a one for me.
All right, that makes sense. And what you were saying about faith makes 100% like sense to me because like faith is belief when there's like not evidence to prove that. So
Right.
yeah, and I don't know. I feel like I'm in between two and three just because like I feel like there's so many like different ways that you could say God presents himself, but I'm not 100% sure because it could just all be random at the end of the day.
Right. Exactly. There's it, and until you know you're done breathing forever, you don't really get to know like that.
As far as we know, who knows
As
what science knows in the future.
yeah, true. Don't let Joe Rogan hear you say that though.
Yeah, I I don't even really know all that much about Joe Rogan, but I know he does some wild shit on his show.
Yes, he does. He does some wild shit in his life. That man's insane.
Hey, shooter shoot.
Yeah, shoot, bro. He's he ain't missing many too, I guess.
Yeah, I guess whatever he's doing is working. But so now we're to arguments for God. So Saint Anselm, or I believe I just fucked his name up.
But
Alsum. I don't
does
know.
it I can't. I don't know if it's on the slide, so I can't see it, I don't think.
I got it on one of them. Yeah, Thomas Aquinas. My bad. Jesus.
Oh
All right,
shit.
so Thomas Aquinas came up with five ways to or five arguments for the existence of God. The first is a series of motion necessitates a first mover. Or so
Hmm.
I'll just like give a kind of quick overview and then I get into these deeper in the further in the slides.
Okay.
Uh, the series of cause and effect requires a first efficient cause. The contingency of beings Jesus, necessitates a non-contingent being to bring forth existence. The degrees of perfection point to a perfect being who has a maximum of all positive qualities, and the order and beauty visible in the world requires an intelligent designer. So, for the first two are, or I believe it's the first three, are versions of the cosmological argument, which is that something had to have started everything. Because as we know from experience, we can't just come into being by ourselves. We need someone to bring us into being. So that could be our mom and dad. If you're a test tube baby, that could be a test tube and whatever sample they put in it. Like, but you don't just come out of nothing. Like,
Yeah, those building blocks came from somewhere.
and that's kind of explained here in this example here, where the first mover had to have been this guy, and he might have only made one or he might have only made two, but he made something, and then that has created and caused existence as we know it.
Yeah, I can follow that. I was actually reading about Aquinas' five ways earlier.
Oh, good. So you probably comment on some of this stuff too. Uh, so this is a Kalam cosmological argument. This is the one I studied in class. So it kind of goes everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And they say that first cause is God.
Hmm. Okay.
Uh, this argument form is called universal instantiation. This means that premise one is a universal statement and premise two is an instance of that statement. This argument is deductively valid because it is impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion false, but a valid argument can still be unsound if one of the premises is untrue. So the conclusion is number three. Do you think either of these premises are untrue or unsound?
I think one could be. Um, just purely, from like an objective standpoint, I do. Because based on, yeah, well, I mean, I suppose it depends on what you define as cause. Because what I was going to say is that going from like my background of biology and a little bit of evolutionary biology, um, things don't change really or come into existence, so to speak, without some sort of evolutionary cause. So you could argue that that inherently does have a cause. Um, so you could apply that same logic, I guess, in a very broad sort of way to why the universe came about. Um, but I don't necessarily know if that's like solid enough for it to stand on, because that's jumping several disciplines of thought over each other there. Um, but I would have to say probably yes, one could be unsound.
Okay.
And two, I mean, the universe just began to exist. Like as far as we know, yes, that's what happened. You know, it just somebody turned on a light switch and there we were. So I think that one's fine.
So you think number two is good?
Yeah, and I think it could be. I think it still could be sound in the absence of premise one as well.
Okay. So yeah, because you're a theist, so you believe that God could just like create everything. Or I don't know if that's like the right way to put that.
I was talking more so from like, well, explaining those thoughts. I was taking a just pretty scientific standpoint to it, not letting doing my best, not let my religious beliefs uh, cast influence over that, I guess.
Oh, okay. I was just
So,
thinking because you were saying that the second premise and then premise three were
mhm.
good. Well, the whole problem with the cosmological argument is, well, something had to have like created something had to have caused the universe.
Mhm.
So that's why I was thinking that could be like dealing with theism, because something would have had to have been God or something outside of the universe. So I just don't like I understand where you could say like everything that begins to exist as a cause could be unsound, but uh I feel like if that's unsound, then like the whole argument's no longer really it really has any the argument's not really saying anything without the premise one.
Well, I mean, and I do have this problem when I was like studying logic. Um, I take words for their semantic meanings, not necessarily their logical ones. And that was something that I had a difficult time like stepping outside of. Um, just to take words at like what they represent logically rather than how we're used to speaking with them.
Yeah.
Um, and so and that could be a flaw in my own thinking, but I took I do see what you're saying there. Without premise one, just two and three wouldn't necessarily make sense, just
Yeah.
because just because the thing exists in that argument does not indicate that it has a purpose at all, actually.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So when you read cause, you read it as like purpose kind of. Oh, okay.
Yes.
So for this argument, at least the way I've been reading it, is like cause is like cause and effect. So like
Oh,
that's why I was saying that about that. I guess I could have maybe explained that a little better.
okay, okay, I understand now. Yes. Yeah, then I would agree with that. It makes me think about what sort of causes the universe itself makes occur.
Yeah. So I'm glad we kind of got like truth to that, because that's what I was trying to get at with this thing here was that like if the green here is the universe, something had to have caused it to happen, or else the universe would be the blue. So either the universe didn't begin to exist and then it's been there forever, but that seems like at least what science has told us, like with Big Bang Theory, how everything's kind of going out. Seems like there was a point that like everything's coming from. So that's why I kind of have a problem with uh saying the universe began to exist? Because if it's always been this way, why is it moving kind of deal? But
Why is it like changing?
like why does it all lead back to a single point? My like because what would have made that point move, if you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it would have had to have been God, right?
It would have had, yeah, something would have, something outside of the universe as we know it would have had to have pushed the universe to make it go the direction
Right.
that it's going.
Okay. Yeah, I follow that.
So I'm glad I was able to like figure out what you meant by cause. But I
Yeah,
never
because
thought of it like that.
we were see there. That's what it is. You paid more attention and tried harder in your logic sections of your philosophy courses than what I did. I love, and on the opposite end of that, like I've studied a little bit of linguistics too, and semantics by far is like my favorite area. Like the study of meaning. Oh my goodness, that's so
Yeah,
much fun to go over and talk about and think about.
because you could go like as far as to say like common things we say like uh people say like, oh, you screwed the pooch on that one. Like you're not actually fucking a dog. You just messed
Right,
up.
exactly. Yeah, idioms are an excellent example of that. Excellent example of that.
But so moving on to the ontological argument. So this argument is the fourth argument. The first three were covered in the cosmological argument. So the argument for this is it is possible that a maximally great being exists. If it's possible that a maximally great being exists, then a maximally great being exists in some possible world. If a maximally great being exists in some possible world, then it exists in every possible world. Because if it didn't, then it would no longer be considered maximally great. If a maximally great being exists in every possible world, then it exists in the world that the actual world that we experience. If a maximally great being exists in the actual world, then a maximally great being exists. Therefore, a maximally great being exists. Uh, so pretty much what I get from this argument, I think I might have another slide here. It makes it a little easier. So if God's existence is possible, then God exists. God's existence is possible, therefore God exists. Is what they're trying to get at here with all that extra stuff in the last slide.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
so the problem with this one is a lot of people could say that God's existence is impossible. So going against the first premise, just because of things like the problem of evil, where it's like there's so much evil in the world, and a maximally great being wouldn't allow that because it would be all powerful, all knowing, and all good. So uh, then if if God isn't maximally great and all good and all powerful and all knowing, then he's not maximally great.
Right.
But I feel like I said that like six times the same exact way.
I mean, you got your meaning across. It was fun to listen to.
Yeah, but do you agree with that argument? Do you think that because it's possible for a maximally great being to exist, that it's necessary that one exists?
It's pretty, I would say religiously, yes. And in fact, in order for religion for like a monotheistic or polytheistic religion, or I guess I think I would use the term just theistic in general religions, ones that focus more so on there being some deity of some sort that oversees or is in control or has great influences over our world. um I would say that they need that to be true,
Yeah.
you know. But if we're
So
talking about something like, and I don't maybe my understanding of Buddhism is wrong, but I do not believe they focus on any one individual. It's a lot more collectivist, I guess. You focus a lot more on like on yourself and how to just become better, essentially, using very, 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 very general and non-specific terms there. But yeah.
Oh yeah. Uh, yeah. So I kind of like this argument because it kind of like sets up like how God must be like maximally great, or else he's not really God, because
Right.
you know what I mean. So I like this argument a lot because it like defines what maximally great is, and it kind of, oops, for me it kind of takes away and kind of makes me less of a believer in God, just because of the existence of evil. So
Yeah.
either the things I consider evil are actually good, or like there's no God as I should understand it.
Right. Yeah. That's an argument that a lot of people think about in that way.
But moving on. So this should be related to the order and beauty visible in the world requires an intelligent designer. Uh, I think this could be attributed to like the watchmaker argument. At least that's how it was explained to me in my classes. So the watchmaker argument is pretty much like if you walk in a forest and you find a watch, you'll see the parts and know that it was made by somebody and it isn't like straight out of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that could be like considered, or that same analogy could be considered for the universe, how certain things work and how you can see how all the parts work together. You know that there was something that created it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So the teleological argument, or the argument from design, Thomas Aquinas's fifth way, is that everything works to some purpose or end or telos, kind of how you were using cause earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so for Thomas, the entire world exhibits order and design, implies intelligence and conscious intent of a designer. Observed beneficial results suggest that there's a pattern of direction behind this. Modern examples would be like cells or chromosomes or molecules. Like, why is it that my cells know, like, how is it that my cells know to take energy from the mitochondria? Like, something had to have told the cells that that's how they should do things. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And they're saying that that must be God.
Right. And it can even get more complex than that, right? Because what, in a very technical sense, what you were talking about is the DNA and RNA of the cells, right? That's what tells individual parts of the cells what to do, even down to like the microscopic level, like on a very or molecular level, I should say. Um, well, what you're talking about is, well, how exactly did evolution come about to engineer DNA in the first place? To
Yeah.
tell the cells what to do. How did that very first step happen? You know, uh, and that's that teleological argument. Goodness, teleological. That's
And
the one.
kind of like I was saying in at the beginning of the video, like I'm not claiming to have all the answers here, people. Like I just want to present the information so more people have like an understanding and can use the language to talk about these things, because I think they're worth talking about.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. And it's just fun to explore stuff like this, you know?
Yeah, I agree. That's why I made my whole channel.
Yeah.
So we're about at the end here. So we have the arguments against the existence for God. I kind of kept this slide short just because, wow, I picked a pretty poor font for here. But arguments from poor design are the arguments I decide to go with. There's a bunch of arguments. I might actually end up going to the Wikipedia page just because I think some of them are worth talking about, even though I didn't put them on here. But the first argument from poor design is the problem of evil, which denies the existence of an all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good God by arguing that such a God would not permit the existence of evil or suffering. Uh, Richard Carrier, the universe itself seems to be ill-designed for life because the vast majority of space in the universe is utterly hostile to it. This is arguably unexpected on the hypothesis that the universe was designed by a god, especially a personal god, as compared to a absolute god. So a personal god could be explained as a god that you can like relate to personally, while an absolute god is kind of just a force. Um, So if it was designed by a personal God, he would understand the personal problems of the people, while an absolute God would just do things for the betterment of whatever aim that God is aiming for. To kind of make the personal God make a little more sense.
Yeah.
But Carrier contends that such a universe contends that right. Carrier
So
contends that a God could have easily created a universe in which the volume of the universe is more inhabitable by humans and other life forms. And while a personal God, so I'm gonna just go ahead and restart that whole sentence because I fucked up my notes there. So
go for it, man. You're fine.
pretty much what Carrier's saying is that like if God wanted to, if he's really all powerful, all knowing, and all good, he could have made a universe that was where humans could have breathed in space or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, and he's saying like while a personal God might have created the kind of universe we observe, he says that this is not the kind of universe we would likely expect to see if an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all good God would have created it. So he finally argues that unlike theism, our observations about the nature of the universe are strongly expected on the hypothesis of atheism, since the universe would have to be vast, very old, and almost completely devoid of life if life were to have arisen by sheer chance, which it is,
It is. Well, yeah.
as far as we know, at least.
As far as we know, it is very, very old to us. Yes.
So yeah, that's the arguments, and I'm pretty sure that's the last slide I have. I'm gonna try and pull up this Wikipedia page. Wikipedia, existence of God. Ooh. All right. So one argument I really wanted to get into real quick was the omnipotence argument, because I think it's a good one, especially for someone like you who is a theist, because I'm sure you've been asked this question before too. Is it logically contradictory to say that God can create a rock so big he can't move it?
Sorry, I was responding to the chat. I didn't want my uh, typing to get in the way of your voice recording.
I'm glad you did that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I
So
would say, well, it's talking about it would be like a logical contradiction for God to create an object so large that he couldn't move it, right?
Yeah.
Right. I agree with that. It would be a logical contradiction, and I'm going to give. I no, I agree with that. It wouldn't make sense using the logic that we do and having our understanding of the universe as it is.
So actually one of my professors, actually Professor not Professor, Dr. Leahy gave an argument that said that that is not a logical contradiction to say that God can create a rock that is so big he can't move it. Because
Really?
if he can't, then he's so strong that he can't make things that are like immovable from him. And then if he can, then he can create things so strong that even he can't like move it. So that neither of those things take away from his power is what he claimed. Because
Yeah.
either if he can, if he can or he can't, then he's still the most powerful being.
Right.
I honestly, like, when you said that to me the first time, it kind of like blew me away because I was like, huh, it seems like it's logically contradictory, but actually, if you think about it, if he can create something that's so big he can't move it, then he's the most
He
powerful
still,
creator.
yeah, he still created it.
Yeah.
Right.
And if he can't, then he's so powerful that he can't even make things that he can't move.
He can't even outdo himself.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, another omniscience paradox is it argues that God cannot be omniscient because he would not know how to create something unknown to himself. And he's saying that if he doesn't know how to create something unknown to himself, then that's something he doesn't know, making him not all knowing.
But isn't him being all knowing, doesn't that encompass like every knowable thing there is ever,
Well, it
though?
would to be like literally everything, because anything
Yeah.
outside of like what he could know would be a would make him not omniscient anymore.
Right. Yeah.
But like that's the whole problem would be like then he's not all knowing. So if there was anything that he could not know, then he would not be all knowing. And they're saying that he wouldn't know how to create something unknown to himself.
Like human consciousness, is that what it,
No, just like anything, like
just
even
anything?
something we couldn't even think of. Like it's unknown to us, so we can't even think of it is the whole problem. But it would be known, it would be unknown to God too. I don't know. This one's hard.
It's harder to like quantify, yeah. And I guess what I'm saying is if a god is really all knowing, it's kind of like that cosmological argument you brought up earlier. Um, God has to be that great because he is that great. Otherwise, he's not God. You know,
Yeah.
that's my line of thinking of it.
Okay, so you're saying it doesn't even really matter because either he's
Yes,
God or not. I
right.
can see what you're saying there too. Oh yeah.
Which is a relatively common response to a question like that.
All
And I'm
right.
sure there are ways around it. And the some of my philosophy friends that are watching that aren't religiously inclined are probably twisting in their seats listening to me talk about it like that.
So another argument of the contradiction of all being all powerful and all knowing is God bound to follow whatever God foreknows himself to doing? Can he step off his script? And if he does, would he know that he's stepping off the script, or would that be something he does without knowing?
Yeah, that question kind of makes me wonder why God does anything at all, ever.
So actually, I had a good point. I don't even remember what class this was from, but there was an argument that said if God does anything at all, then he's changing, which would make him no longer the most powerful being in the universe. Because if you change and you're the best, then you're no longer the best.
Yeah, but that one I feel like doesn't hold up as well because like look at people that are actually the best at what they do. They are almost constantly changing and updating their playbook or strategy or whatever you want to call it. They're constantly acquiring new skills to continue to be the best because that's what being the best is.
So you think being the best is like just because I feel like if you're the best and what you do is like the best, there'd be no reason to change it.
Until someone comes along that would be better than you.
But the whole thing with God is that like he would be like if anything comes along that's better than him, then he's not God.
Well, then he would. We're you're bringing back, or we're getting back into the that prose we were just talking about. How um, if God if something is unknown to God, he's all knowing, or he can't be all knowing.
Yeah.
Which is, I feel like, a tricky logical instrument to kind of throw around for me at least. Um, Let me think about it just a little bit longer.
Okay.
I think it falls back in line with what I've said probably several times now. Um, is that that's just God for God to exist. That's how He exists. It's outside of what uh, we're currently capable of understanding. I was talking about that with someone earlier today, actually, um, about how faith kind of seems like the irrational choice at the moment, but that's just because that's how our brains are like hardwired to understand it, or that's based on our understanding of the world already, or not the world but the universe already. God exists outside of that, or what if God exists outside of that understanding that we have, so it would never make sense to you, would be my standpoint on that, because it's God, it's divine, and you are not divine.
Yeah, there was one argument against I think it was for the existence of God, where it was like because God is supposed to be transcendent, any like definitions we ascribe to him are automatically false because how would we know?
Mm-hmm.
But then that kind of makes it hard to like, at least for me, it makes it hard to like know and believe in something I can't even like know or like know or
Right, and that's what I was saying. It doesn't Faith doesn't seem like it makes logical sense, right?
yeah.
Because of things like that come along with being faithful. You're accompanied by these really important questions, and sometimes, a lot of the times, you just have to be like, yeah, that's faith. That's how it goes. That's how it works.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think this was a really good episode. Do you have any questions for me or anything like that?
Um, what is, if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah.
what is your particular religious affiliation?
So
Just for shits and giggles.
just for shits and gigs, I'd say I lean more towards the Buddhist way of doing things. I haven't like the last time I took a class in Buddhism that like kind of changed the way I kind of act around people and shit like that
Mm-hmm.
was my, I want to say, sophomore year of college. And since then I haven't really been acting the same. But uh I want to say I'm Buddhist, but I don't know if I actually follow any of the Buddhist kind of things. I just try to act in a way that like I would want others to act towards me to the highest.
Right.
I can do that too.
Following that golden rule
Yeah.
that is the basis of pretty much every major religion's core philosophy: do unto others as you would have done unto you.
And I actually had an episode, I think it was the first one, about like the state of nature. And that could just be because I might have that view just because I was like raised in a society that is like an underpinning like thing in our society is like you don't go and shoot someone because someone could come up and shoot you kind of deal.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
who knows if I like lived in a different place if I would still have the same beliefs.
Taking a bit of a mirrored approach to the same line of logic, but the same line of thinking nonetheless. I like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just for the last little piece,
Hmm.
what's your message to the world?
My message to the world: uh, love each other, man. And kids are smarter than you think. Those two things. Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, make sure you respect children and share and like love everybody because we're all in this together, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
That's the end. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. I'll be making videos a lot more frequently now. Now, like have a little system down. And thank you for watching.